as we try to navigate our world, and there's so much noise going on, is what I want to call it. But what I'm meaning is a variety of perspectives that are also mainstream. And at what point do we realize that we have to quiet the noise? It's like I don't have to be open to every voice that's out there, because there are a lot of them. There are too many, like in my experience, there are too many voices that want to be heard, and I can't hear them all. Honestly, I don't have the strength or the memory to like, okay, now what did they say and who, and then now I'm hearing something different, and then this story over here. It's just so much to keep up with. I had a strong sense this week. There's just so much noise, and I heard that there's another death. I didn't, but I didn't go looking for it. But someone told me someone else was either. Here's an example of why the noise is crazy making. I can't remember if I'm thinking of the same story or if it were two stories now. That there was a lynching threat down in maybe Georgia, no, in Alabama, and the guy did get away, and he's alive, but there was some kind of threat. But I didn't go and search for it or look at. Does anyone have a clue of what I'm talking about? Yes. So apparently that's real, because we have at least one other person who's heard of it. And I would be, well, I was already the second, because I heard it from someone else. And I can't remember who, but I think I also heard that someone else was shot or died. And it's kind of related to all the same madness that's going on in the year 2020. What a year. You know, with all of our advancements and technology and inventions and exploration, you know, whether that's exploration in space or whether that's exploration of newly discovered ancient sites, we have all this wealth of information, and I feel like we don't have a lot of wisdom. We're in the information age, which seems to be a little wisdom-less. And with all of the things that we do know, we still struggle to understand who we are as human beings. And again, back to the voices and how so many things are marketed our way. Listen to this and hear me, and this group over here and that group over there. And I feel like it's distracting, and I feel like it can be confusing. And I don't know how younger generations are dealing with any of it. And by younger, I guess I mean, if you're under 21, what do you think of the world right now? How do you, like, I assume you're trying to plan your future, but what does the future look like for a 20-year-old person right now? I don't know. And I'd like to have some population of that age group be a part of talks like this, so I can learn from them, because I think that would help me. I want to go on a little journey with you, and it's going to be brief, meaning this portion of the talk should be brief, and it's going to be internal. I'm going to invite you to close your eyes with me, and I want you to imagine that you are driving a car. So you're going to get into a car, and I want you to feel what that car is like, just the way the seats feel. And maybe you'll look at the steering wheel, and you'll look at the dash, and you'll look at the passenger seat, and you'll look in the back seat. Maybe you'll take a look in the rearview mirror and the side mirrors. I just want you to take a full inventory of where you are in the space of that vehicle, and as much as you can take in where you and the vehicle are by looking out the window and the side mirrors and the rearview mirror. And maybe you're taking a drive now. What is that road like? Is it a highway? Is it a dirt road? Where are you? And how are you feeling in the moment? And I want you to imagine that you felt a little bump under the front wheel and a little bump behind the back wheel. And what did you just run over? And then we'll come back to the present reality with our eyes open. And I want to share, I don't know what kind of car I was in. Everything I experienced kind of had a golden glow to it. Like maybe it was very sunshiny, but with a golden tint across everything. The upholstery and the seating were like leather draped and very comfortable, and I could smell leather, and I didn't see an emblem on the steering wheel, so I don't know what kind of car it was. It was very comfortable, and I was driving down a dirt road with grassy fields and what seemed like just like country farm fencing, like a place where cows might be. And I think I ran over an armadillo, which is weird. Very weird. That actually happened to me once, but I was the passenger. It was years ago in Texas. And so I actually do know what that feels like. It's a big, it's not very nice. Would anyone else want to share what you experienced?
I was driving down the Pacific Coast Highway in California, and it was a Porsche car because they drive differently. When I've driven them, they just drive different, the really high-end ones.
It was a what car?
Porsche.
You were in a Porsche going down the Pacific Northwest
Highway.
Or Pacific Coast Highway.
And when you said bump, the first thing came to my mind was speed bumps that put them in because you
Speed
just
bump. Okay.
It's just,
Yeah, I felt well at peace in the vehicle. Did you feel?
Yeah, because they just drive like
floating, thriving.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else?
I wasn't too happy when you said you ran over something because a rabbit came to mind, and I was very sad.
A rabbit came to mind.
I was so sad.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What kind of vehicle do you think you were in?
Subaru.
In a Subaru. Okay.
Leather seats. How
Okay.
random.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of a cream-colored leather. How funny is that?
Cream-colored
Golden retriever
leather.
in the back seat.
Golden retriever in the back seat. Wow.
That was fun.
That was fun.
And I was on the Turnagain, and it morphed into the Glen Allen, and I was headed to Valdez.
On the Turnagain, on the arm.
Yeah.
Turnagain arm, and
But
it morphed into Glen Highway,
heading
and you
to
were headed to
Valdez.
Valdez, Alaska.
I levitated right over the mountains. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it was It was all going good until I hit the
And
rabbit.
then,
It's like, oh man. Just wanted to be. I saw a white pig get hit by a truck in Hawaii, and the pig rolled over and kept running. He was, and that's what I wanted my rabbit to do.
okay, how about one more?
Sure, I was in my car, which is a Mazda. It's gray on the inside, except
Is
my
it?
car,
It's a Mazda.
Yeah.
Is it like an SUV
Yeah,
or?
it's an SUV.
Okay, it's a
like
Mazda SUV.
Subaru size.
Okay.
Hatchback.
Hatchback. Okay.
And but my car has leather seats, and this car had upholstered seats.
Upholstered seats. Okay.
And I was driving down a road near Seattle where I went and visited a friend. We went hiking, and so we're going down the road toward the hiking, and I had a camper behind me, which is awesome.
A camper behind you
Yeah,
on a familiar road in
yeah,
Seattle.
yeah.
Okay.
And but the bump was really appropriate because I remember when we went for this hike, like the pavement stopped and it was really bumpy, and so you said
Okay.
that I was like, oh yeah, of course.
So
there's
the
a bump.
pavement
Yeah.
stopped, and that's the
Yeah,
bump.
so there
Gotcha.
There were like big craters in it, so
Right.
the pavement really stopped. Yeah.
Well, thank you guys for going on that short journey. Each journey is so unique. What we're experiencing, what it means to us, why we have upholstered seats versus leather ones, when in reality I have upholstered ones and in reality you have leather ones, but our experiences were different. What I think I want to say now is we are conceiving what we are perceiving. That the mind is extremely creative, and we have the power, the ability to see, to conceive, to perceive whatever we want to in the narrative of our day-to-day lives. And so as we talk about the voices and all the noise that we're surrounded by, I get to choose how I'm going to respond to all of the information that's coming my direction. And hopefully I am wise enough to understand that just because I'm hearing information from any source does not necessarily mean I need to invest my energy or attention in what I'm hearing. And I really do have to pick and choose well, what am I going to take in and what am I going to hold at bay and say either no or at least not right now. You are conceiving what you are perceiving, and that is a highly subjective thing. What I perceive is highly subjective. It's not factual. It's not a truth. It's just an experience, and it's one of many, right? We all had an experience just then, and the question might be, is that experience real? And that's a funny thing, because the bump made sense, right? Like you had contextual memory for the bump and you're like, oh, that makes sense. And in some sense it's real because all that sense making is involved. Or the rabbit, right? In some kind of way, that's a real experience. But we know we allowed ourselves to go there, and we did it in the mind, right? So we've gone from talking about, racism and division in our country, and a little bit of politics, and a lot of, well, in the last talk, a lot of on capitalism, which is related to economics, and we talked about the human psyche a bit, the difference between the true self and the ego, and how the ego is so entangled in everything that we're experiencing. All of the things that I just listed, the ego is so heavily involved in all of it. And it seems to me that if we can live with an ego-less world, then all our problems just might melt away. When no one person feels like they have the need or desire to take advantage or have control over anyone else, then the struggles that we're dealing with don't have much support to be a reality. Does that seem logical? Is that too fancy of an idea? You have something, Bruce?
You just remind me of the saying about politicians that the person who wants to have lead you is the person who doesn't want the power.
The person you want to have lead you is the person who does not want
Doesn't
to have the
want the
power.
job necessarily.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they don't even want the job.
Want control you.
Yes.
Not necessarily the right person for the job.
Is that real thunder?
No,
It's just
I think it's just
Was it just
I think
this?
it was
Okay.
there's nothing threatening coming this way right now. Unlike yesterday.
Yeah, you know, there's an ancient story, and it may be from Rome, I'm not sure, about, gosh, someone who's listening here in the or over the video is going to know this story way better than I. So I apologize, but I think it's a story of a farmer who's well known for his wisdom, and he just leads a very simple life, and the king dies, and the kingdom as a whole decides that the farmer is the person to take his place because war is at hand. And so, and apparently the farmer has a history of leadership in the army, okay? And so he accepts the responsibility, and they win. But when it's over, he goes back to being a farmer. And that just kind of reminds me of what you said, Bruce. You are, and so is your neighbor. You are, and so is your neighbor. That power, that ability, that creativity that you have to go within and create whatever you decide as soon as you shut your eyes, and or whatever flow of thoughts begin to come and go, as we addressed in the last talk. That creative intelligence that you have, that you possess, that you are, your neighbor, the person right next to you, or next door, or across the street, or in the next car, or on the next aisle, or in the next cubicle, or in the next political party. They have that too. What is that creative ability? What is this awareness? Is there a word that can summarize this creative intelligence that we all possess? I like the word awareness. I think that's a very appropriate word. I think the word consciousness also works well.
creativity sounds like inventive.
Okay.
As opposed, when I think about kids today,
Mm-hmm.
their lives are often very structured. One of the things about COVID has pulled the rug out from under that for a lot of families, right?
Right.
And I think that we've lost, or younger individuals may have lost the ability to have an inventive, creative mind because everything is so regimented. We're going to X on this day and blah blah blah. You know. And I know that the intention for families is that they want their kids to have the best and to have opportunity. And so the perception is that all of these involvement things will help them do that. But in a lot of ways, I think it's crushing our ability to just be and to find things that engage us without having that structure.
Well said. Mm. Self-aware means aware of the self, aware of myself, even aware of yourself. I am aware of yourself, and I am aware of myself. Who is the self? When I shut my eyes and I went to that place and I was in my car, who am I then? I'm called Lance. That's a label, that's a name. My name is not who I am. The car that I created in that process was just that. It was just a thought. It was just a creation. That's not who I am either. But back to the saying that you are conceiving what you are perceiving, and you are, and so is your neighbor, is just a way to try to grasp this idea that we're all individuated parts of this greater whole, this something that is self-aware, this something that is consciousness, and that the game is all the voices, all the marketing, the variety of news that I hear, the variety of perspectives that I try to take on that seem to, I can seem to lose myself in the individuality or in all the divisions of life, up and down, black or white, Democrat or Republican, rich or poor. All of these are still just concepts that are embedded in the mind, right? They are certain realities that play out of a capitalistic society, which we know is has only been on the map of time for a very small portion of how long life itself has been in existence. So all of this, again, is just something that we're up to right now, but it may not be what we're up to in 100 years, and it certainly wasn't 1,000 years ago. So I had a dream last night, and I write all of my dreams down in a journal like this one, and I don't usually have the immediate time to get into a dream and pull out the message, interpret the dream. But I've been doing that for a long time now, maybe 7 or 8 years of writing down every dream, and sometimes there's multiple dreams in a night, and I think that I've had 7 dreams in a night, and I wasn't able to write all of them down, but I think I was able to get 4 of them down in that night. And then I sit and I do a whole process, and I can't quite explain what that process is because it's never exactly the same, but I pay attention to the details of the dream, and there is always a theme in there somewhere. Just like when I asked the question, you felt a bump in the front tire and a bump in the back tire, what did you just run over? And then some kind of way, there's something there for you, right? And there's a reason why it comes. And dreams are very much like this. If you will pay attention and begin to be curious, then there are answers to be found. Dreams are very uncomfortable a lot of the time, right? I've learned not to be, I've learned not to be afraid of dreams, and so I've developed a courage over time to write them all down, and then no matter how dramatic or traumatic a dream may appear to be, the end result is never what I initially thought it might be. Like, I do not want to see this dream. Why did I have to see that? I don't want to write this down. I don't want to know anything about why I saw that, right? And I've never had it turn out to be an awful experience. In fact, it's always been quite enlightening. I want to encourage everyone who's listening, whether that's here now or on video or on the podcast, to investigate your dreams. And if you need help, just reach out to me. I can help. We are not educated on a lot of things. We're educated on many things, but remember in the beginning we were talking about being in the information age, which seems wisdomless. So we're gathering information, but I'm not sure that we're becoming better humans because of it. And if that's not a huge part of the reason why we're here, to become better humans, I don't really know how to finish that sentence. I guess what I'd like to say is, don't we all want to become better humans? And if we're wasting our time doing things that aren't helping us in that direction, then maybe we can weed some of those things out, which goes back to the voices. Ripping up the weeds of the voices, or like we discussed last time, the thoughts that come into our minds and can sometimes take control of us. And we'll get so embedded or so entangled in the thought that we begin to think that it's who we are, that I am those thoughts. It's very subtle and it's very tricky, almost deceptive. But thoughts and dreams are like movies, right? They play and you can feel, you have emotion, you're in the moment, but hopefully you don't get lost in that reality. So about this dream, it was very some of the things I wrote down about it. It was concerning, it was wearisome, it was burdening, that there was a heaviness, as if all is lost or as if I missed an opportunity. This is what I felt in this dream. And what it revealed was certain attachments that I hold, certain false realities I can live my life in, and certain lies I believe in. Okay, so after thinking about this dream for several minutes, I wrote this. I acknowledge that my heart appreciates freedom. Does it feel free? Does it feel freeing? Or does it feel heavy, oppressive, and worrisome? The previous dream felt like the latter and brought emotions of the same, more attachment to what does not exist. I exist always, forever and more. Okay, I'm going to pause there because that's a major sentence. I exist always, forever and more. It's okay. That was awesome. Bring a nice laugh into that intensity there. So the sentence, I exist always, forever and more, that sentence was born out of this, out of what we were discussing earlier about self-awareness and consciousness, right? There is something at work here. And as I say here, I'm looking around at all of you and thinking about all of us as individual experiences of one awareness, one consciousness. And it gives us each the ability to say, I am. Like, I'm here. One philosopher, Rene Descartes, said, I think, therefore I am. And that's a reasonable thing to say. I'll be frank and say I think he had it backwards, though. I am, therefore I think. I think being precedes the ability to think. Yeah, and that should be obvious, but apparently it's not so obvious because that statement is a very renowned statement in the world. So I humbly offer that opinion of mine, that I think being precedes thinking. And the ability to say I exist always, forever and more is also the most freeing and unattached thing I could possibly say, because it means I have connected this idea of this person in this body to something that's far larger and far greater, and something that is not divided, something that is whole. And remember, I started by saying, does it feel free? I'm acknowledging that my heart appreciates freedom. And so the ability to get to this place or point that says I exist always is a place where there's just ultimate peace and ultimate freedom. Because I'm not sure how to put the next thought into words. Because it's even free of death. The I is beyond death. Death as we perceive it, right? As human beings. Again, I said, I'm called Lance, and I'm an individual experience in this body, and this is what will pass. But this I, the I, I am, this consciousness, this awareness, it was before this was, and it is, and it will be, and it comes and goes like the wind that's blowing now. These concerns and worries only exist in my mind, the mental construct by which I navigate the world. It is a construct built upon things I've been told, things I believe, certain biases and prejudices and judgments. If I identify with my mind, I take on a constructed personhood, a false identity based in thoughts and beliefs which are fleeting and unstable. Have you ever decided something and then 5 minutes later changed your mind? Or um, have you ever been so sure you knew which direction you were going and then you got halfway there and you're like, where am I going again? I don't think I'm going the right way. We have this experience of an ever-changing world, but really what's happening is all of us are changing, right? I'm the one who's shifting, and that's why these these thoughts and these beliefs are fleeting and unstable, as I said, right? I think I'm going to start at that paragraph again, just because it just feels like I should. These concerns and worries only exist in my mind, the mental construct by which I navigate the world, a construct built upon things I've been told, things I believe, certain biases, prejudices, and judgments. If I identify with my mind, I take on a constructed personhood, a false identity based in thoughts and beliefs which are fleeting and unstable. And in the first talk that we had, which was now 5 or 6 weeks ago, we discussed the terms black and white as terms that are used to address groups of people, but by definition don't actually apply to those groups of people. And in fact, that biologists and anthropologists are saying that there's more diversity within a group of people than between groups of people. So here we are existing under a certain construct about race, which is also a term that is not used in the proper way. There is a race, which is called humanity, but some kind of way we still discuss black and white as races, and it's laughable to me now. And we get lost in this narrative, in this story. Fleeting and unstable, prejudices and biases and beliefs that have been handed down to us. The heart is a depth, which is pure and free, a simple presence, the true I, or the true self. The mind is not this. It is busy doing, full of worry, concern, anxiety, depression, fear. The mind is fueled by ego, the narrator, the voice or voices in my head. I like to call this the 18-inch journey from the mind to the heart. And that the heart is not just this incredibly powerful organ that has beating with you since day one. Day one is not the day you entered, or how do we say it? Day one is not the day you came out kicking and screaming. Day one was before that, right? In the womb, the heart begins. But the heart is more than that. It's the core of the self. We're talking about the core of a person is the heart, the seat of emotion and that creative power that we have been talking about. How do I get out of my mind the voices, the narrative, the information, all the marketing that comes my way, and get into the heart, that place of simple presence, the place that is pure and free, because that's what I'm ultimately looking for. And I know I'm looking for that because something calls me to take a stand for justice, okay? And this is why humans around the world fight for things that they believe in. We will protest, we will riot. It's the sense of things are not okay in the world, and I and others are being treated unfairly. This is the desire for that which is pure, that which is free, that which is peaceful. That is in the human heart. It's a very tricky thing, though, that our egos are along for the ride. Here's this heart that longs for what is true, peaceful, and just in the world, and then the ego's right there whispering all the most divisive things possible about everything. The heart is a depth which is pure and free, a simple presence, the true I, or the true self. The mind is not this. It is busy doing, full of worry, concern, anxiety, depression, fear, and that list could go on and on and on, right? The mind is fueled by ego, the narrator, the voice in my head. And to recap briefly, the last time we talked about the ego, we linked it to some ancient words that that portray an aspect of the human psyche that is overly self-involved. And I'm doing this because the word is pinpointing to a serpent that winds around something, anything. As I'm saying that, I'm seeing the World Health Organization's symbol. And that's interesting to me. The point being is that the ego is a narrator that we can take inventory of. We can take a good look and begin to notice the voice in the head, right? Just like I was able to jot that dream down, and I basically realized, oh, this is a part of the ego in me that's attached to these certain things, and I have to unwind it because it's got me bound. But I know the cry of my heart is for freedom. Be aware of the story instead of identifying with and being trapped in the story. That is what the human ego does. And this is what, as Bruce so kindly pointed out, maybe maybe our leaders I'm going to assume are doing the best they can, but they're definitely not taking a look at ego. And I'm suggesting that we all need to take a good look there. Because again, whatever change we would like to see happen in the world, it has to happen within us first. And if I'm saying I would like a world that gives equity and equality to everyone, no matter where they are from or what they look like or how they choose to live their lives, then I have to make sure that I'm actually being that right here. Am I actually walking with that and thinking that? Or when no one's around, is there a voice in my head saying something a little different about the people who I don't quite understand why they do what they do, or live a certain way, or I'm getting better at catching my own ego. But I realize ego's along for the ride. And the victory is just in the daily, or I should say the minute by minute successes of going, oh, I hear that story, I see that. Instead of talking to myself. Because that can happen, where I begin to play out the story and now I'm talking to the story in my mind. Jeez. I used to have a fear that talking to oneself is crazy. And here's the thing. We all have ego, so we're all crazy. We all carry it around with us, whether it's with the mouth that we're speaking or just up here playing it out, right? And what if what I'm thinking I'm whispering and don't even realize that it's happening? We talked about last time how the word government in Latin broke down to mind control in English. And there was a whole backstory to that led us to that point. And I'm sorry if you missed it. That video will be published by the time this video is published. So you can go back and see it, how there was a bit of a story that led us to that point. But we were discussing the ego again, and how essentially all of this is about the mind, all of it. And so it seemed ironic that the word government broke down to mind control. And mind control is what we're discussing now. How do I deal with the voices in my head? And there's a good way to go about doing government, and there's a not so good way to go about doing government. And we discussed how a government that is run by ego wants to take from the people it's meant to lead or to govern. And a government that is based in the heart or based in the true self wants to do all it can to empower its people, and it would rather see its own collapse than to see its people suffer injustice. And that's what we're after, right? Oh man, like that's what we want. That's what we desire. There's an ancient saying that the kingdom is within you. The word kingdom also can be translated as queendom. It's a domain. It's a territory. It's a place that comes from within. And we've already been talking about it this whole time when we talk about consciousness and self-awareness and the heart and the true self. That the unity and the peace that we would want to see in our physical existence is a unity and a peace that we have to find within first. Because then I can be a good citizen of this world, and perhaps I can be a leader of some sort to help create this peace and unity that I'm saying I want. And hopefully I'm saying I have found that within, or how else can I speak to anyone else and say we can have peace and unity? Where would that idea come from if I didn't have some idea of it here first? So as you can see, I've taken this whole discussion about racism and division, and I've tried, or I have felt it necessary to weed out as many distractions as possible and just get to the most basic foundation of what it means to be human. Who are we truly? And is there a way to really affect change in our world that is not dependent upon institutions or laws or organizations? And the reason why I thought that was appropriate was because we've been trying through those avenues for hundreds of years and arguably thousands of years. and we're still struggling with the same problems. And that's a very uncomfortable thought for me, that while we have seen some sort of change, and I don't know how to qualify that change. We've seen some sort of change, but maybe it's just fancy technology that we're really getting out of it all. Ugh, that it almost makes me sick to think of it. That sure, maybe we have a more comfortable way of life as humans, but that's not really what we're after. I don't think that's really what we're after. Perhaps we were happier when our days started at sunrise and we immediately went to the fields and began to work and to cut wood and to raise animals, and maybe we were happier in that simplicity and in that own hard working life. I can't know that for sure, but I'm still wondering, out of all the change we've seen, why at a social level, which comes out of our emotions, right? Like the way we interact with one another, why we seem just as lost, perhaps, as the history books have been telling us all along. I think the human heart is the core of the matter, and that there's a lot of healing that needs to take place. And I've seen a lot of angry individuals because of things that have happened in their past or things that have happened to them, regardless of what their cultural heritage is, whether they're Latino or Mexican or African or Italian or German. It's like we all have these histories that are full of pain. And a lot of that pain is just in our own families a lot of times, right? It's the household you grew up in, or the grandparents you had, or however that story might go. I've said a lot, and I would like to open up this microphone to ideas and questions and anything else. Any thoughts? Any questions?
I can start it off.
Okay.
I was thinking, I forget the term, you were talking about the creativity of the mind, and I realized that I really have been discounting that in some of the people that have really, without naming a lot of names, our current president, people that follow him blindly and willingly and love, like they're all in. And I realized as you were talking that I've stopped giving them the belief that they have that creative possible within them anymore. That it's like it's lost. On the sense when we talked a couple of weeks ago about some of the trappings of capitalism and the fact that capitalism has so not been a bad bill of goods for many people. And I just think that that's so interesting, because I think of myself in my heart. I love people in general. I love people, and I just well up with compassion for people, but I've started to pull back from a group of people thinking like it's missing, like something's missing. And so I really appreciate today, because that's not a good thing to take that away from somebody. It's that potential to that life spark of, you know, changing an idea. Because my ideas are always changing. And yeah. So anyway, that's
Thank you.
that was the gift of today for me.
Okay.
So I'll try to look differently and be more open to change within a conversation.
Mm-hmm. Very nice. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah. You know, if one of us can become better or healthier versions of ourselves, then that gives hope for the whole world. If I close myself off to anyone at all, I really, if I close myself off to anyone at all, I ultimately close myself off to myself.
That's the trap.
And it's very, yeah,
It's a trap.
Yeah. And that's the ego at work. The ego begins to whisper about someone else, right? And so begins the story, so begins the narrative. And the ultimate reality is, I don't know anything about that person. What I'm doing is perceiving. And remember, the sentence was, I'm conceiving what I'm perceiving. It's all just back to me. I'm trying to gather information that I don't really have. I don't really hold that information at all. And so it is perhaps the pinnacle of pride to think I know about you. You know, I don't. And there's parts of me that I'm still getting to know, which is why the dream came to me last night. You know, it's like, oh, there's something here you have to take a look at. And after 7 years of journaling dreams, I thought I'd figured it all out, you know. Right. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
I wrote something a couple years ago, and what you're
Can
saying.
you come up to the
Yeah.
microphone? Thank you.
Great, thank you. I wrote something a couple years ago, and what you're saying kind of reminded me of it. So do you mind if I read it?
Go for it.
It's actually something I read in front of a group of Christian artists. There's some theology in there. Hopefully, you know, if you come from a different faith expression, you know, I think it's just words on some more universal truths. So hopefully don't be turned off by that. As a culture, I think we are seeing the limits of the ability of facts to combat lies. More information exists than ever before. Then there's information about the information. And then there are arguments about what facts are true and what are not. I can think of a lot of reasons this might be happening, but uncovering the truth in a sea of information seems to be getting increasingly difficult. There's some amazing scientific work going on. There's perhaps less amazing study of human behavior, judging from what gets sifted to me through the news, Facebook, etc. But being an informed person no longer seems to pack the punch that it used to. Information seems to be losing its power to help me navigate life in a meaningful way. It does less and less to help me combat the lies in my head about who I am, why I'm on this planet, how I should behave toward my fellow human beings in the time that I have. Where do those lies come from, anyway? As a Christian, I believe there's a spiritual entity who's the father of lies. He's jealous, he can't make anything himself. So he uses all of his formidable strength and intelligence to try to destroy what is and what is good. We often think of good being the cessation of bad, particularly moral good. I stopped drinking and my life got better, etc. But I think, in fact, good is infinite. God spoke the universe into being, and it's been expanding ever since. Good doesn't stop evil, evil stops or obscures what is good. Lies obscure what is good, distort our perception of it. but they do not have their own raw material. Lies eventually end in the ultimate cessation of good, death, ending life. Unlike the father of lies, people have creativity. However, our power to create is not raw. I can creatively combine sounds on my violin. I can even make the violin from a tree I grew from the ground. But I do not create music itself, or even the idea of the tree I used to make the instrument. The raw materials came from the universe, not from me. Since I am imitative at my core, the power I have is in what I choose to imitate. I can either imitate the lies constantly poured into my ear like poison, or I can imitate the creative goodness that has been exploding into being since the foundation of the world. Imitate death-dealing lies or life-giving creativity. If lies stand in opposition to creative power, my creative act becomes a weapon against the evil of the universe, potentially one much more potent than facts or facts. Because no good has a limit on its own, this is a quote from Gregory of Nyssa. Because no good has a limit on its own nature, but is limited by the presence of its opposite, as life is limited by death and light by darkness. And every good thing generally ends with all those things which are perceived to be contrary to the good. It's the end of the quote. The more we reflect the creative light, the more we are unstoppable.
Can you read one more? There was before the quote, you said something about creative potential? Is that what it was?
I can either imitate the lies constantly poured into my ear like poison, or I can imitate the creative goodness that has been exploding into being since the foundation of the world. Imitate death-dealing lies or life-giving creativity. If lies stand in opposition to creative power, my creative act becomes a weapon against the evil of the universe, potentially one much more potent than facts.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I was saying that about our word ego stemming back to an ancient word in Hebrew and Aramaic for the serpent, and the roots of the word serpent break down to an enchanter or a whisperer of spells, and it goes hand in hand with the father of lies. That essentially this ancient story goes back to the story of Adam and Eve, and how the serpent came in and began to whisper into Eve's ear that she didn't have all that she needed actually, and that she should look outside of herself, which is the same dilemma that we're all dealing with today, right? Hmm.
Thinking maybe you guys can help me work this out. So, if for the last 3.5 years, I've had dear friends they just love Trump, and it's, I think I just have lost that part I was talking about, that they have that creative spark within, and when you were talking about the creative goodness springing forth, so. Here's the dilemma. So what do I do? Like, how do I love on them, but at the same time hold my own truth? Because I think it's really coming down to, I don't want to see our country fall apart into a civil war. And I feel like headwise, we're already there. There's so much division. Yeah. And we're starting to shoot each other a bit more. And so I really worry about that. Like, so what's the solution? I think the part about holding on to our own creative potential really resonates true. And so that's a big piece of it. But how do we really get in relationship where I could have as a real a conversation as I'm being vulnerable here, be that vulnerable with them so that creative potential can be there? And I honestly don't know, because I feel like the reason I've pulled back from my friends that dearly love Trump very much is because it's becoming inauthentic, because I feel like I can't be vulnerable. And so that's my dilemma.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
It's a very vulnerable. And your chair is right on the edge of the deck, so just, yeah.
Hey, was over.
You know, if I'm assuming if any of us feel like we cannot be ourselves in a space or amongst a group of people, that obviously is not a good feeling. If we feel unsafe, that doesn't mean necessarily physically unsafe, but we just don't feel safe in a certain environment. It's very good to be aware of that. How to proceed? I think we do have to take care of ourselves, one, if we don't feel safe. And then in the not feeling safe, how do we check our hearts so that it really is about just being safe and not about, well, whatever next best lie the ego may begin to whisper, you know, because people who make you feel unsafe, you can typically begin to get trapped in a narrative about them. And I think that is a wonderful part of transformation for the individual, for you, and who knows what it could do for the group, because perhaps someone might ask you and go, hey, you haven't been around, or we haven't heard from you, and then perhaps you'll have the courage to say, you know, I just haven't been feeling comfortable or safe, and here's some reasons why I'm uncomfortable. And so who knows what that could shift, you know. But our willingness to just be honest with ourselves, you know, and really go within and get curious about all those feelings, so that if that opportunity came to you or to us, we could speak to it very directly and innocently at the same time. Yeah? Okay.
Take turns talking.
Yeah.
I have two thoughts on that. One is my opinions have shifted pretty dramatically in the last 10 years, and the starting point for that for me was a friend telling me that she wasn't comfortable. And you know, I didn't really respond well at first, I will admit that, but it kind of planted a seed of change. And it was like you were saying earlier, I mean, you know, our head it's along for the ride. The ego's along for the ride. The heart changes first, right? And the things that get to the heart aren't arguments. They're love, they're beauty, and pain. You know, your love for them and your willingness to be vulnerable is probably the most powerful tool that you have to eventually change what's going on up here. I know that's what worked with me. But it is hard if you don't feel safe.
Yeah.
So I'm more of a processor before I speak. So this is trying to pull all this together because I do like to think first. But in Buddhism, there's a term, we are they. And the Dalai Lama says to the Tibetans, embrace the Chinese, learn the language. And I think back to when Trump was elected, and it became my mantra because I didn't want to go to the same ugly place that people who hated Obama were in. We hate Obama. I didn't want to be a part of this hate Trump thing because hate doesn't transcend anybody, it doesn't lift anybody.
Right.
So I think of this, we are they. And this morning in my Sangha, my Buddhist group, we were talking about the universal mind, the consciousness, the one consciousness we all come from. And that consciousness is kind of like a river. And we are all there, Hitler and Buddha and everybody in between. And we fall over the waterfall and we individuate. And then at the bottom of the pool, when we die or whatever, the end, we come back together into the universal mind. So I think about this idea of we are they. It has allowed me to open my heart to many different right ways of thinking and being. We will always be a little divisive. We will think our way is the right way. And this last weekend, I was hiking with some girlfriends that are very Republican, and I could just be with them. And for me, it was my experience of opening my heart and mind to them and hearing them and trying to understand deeper. Not to make them wrong and me right. I'm way done with that. But just to be present with people that I can love in many different ways. So my mantra continues, we are they. And the Dalai Lama rocks.
Thank you.
So we all struggle with our egos. I struggle with mine. And so we all need help to help to rise up above that. And I think we need to go inside our own hearts to find out what that help is. For me, it's thinking of whatever it is for you, a source of truth, wherever you get that source, apply that. I kind of want to think of the golden rule, but then there's another level above that. Do unto others as you would have them to do unto you. Could be do unto others as that wise being that you know would do to them. So it's like take the golden rule up a level. And forgiveness is a very important thing for us to do for ourselves and to other people. It kind of helps free me up.
Thank you. I like the we are they. I like that. Gosh, if I could carry the compassion to hold that mantra as a reality in my heart, I am them or I am you, whoever them and you might be. You know, there's another ancient saying that says to even let's see, you've heard it has been said that you should not commit murder, but if you're even angry in your heart, you've committed murder. And I might look down upon a murderer, but I sure have been angry before. That's a difficult saying, you know? That's a difficult thing to. Mhm. Hmm. You know, when in the story of the shepherd Moses, when he climbed the mountain, he was just, I think he was following after a lost sheep in his herd, and he stumbles across, the story goes, he stumbles across a burning bush that is not being consumed, and he hears the voice of God in the bush, and he asks God, "What is your name?" And in Paleo Hebrew, that name is Ahaya or Ahya. And it translates to I am or I exist. And all of this comes full circle about we are they and consciousness and self-awareness and being able to go within and realize that you are not your thoughts, that they are fleeting, that they are not sufficient, they're not stable, they're not concrete. That when I ask myself, who is observing these thoughts? Who is hearing the chatter or the whisper? My answer is, I am. And that is that awareness, right? The self-awareness which we all have, we all are, we all take part in. There's something very, very powerful and very moving about that. And in the West, we're not so inclined to pay attention to any of this. You know, it's more of an Eastern thing, right? All of these stories and mantras and proverbs and parables and, you know, scriptures, inspired writings, they're all Eastern. And they carry a lot of wisdom. And again, here in the West, we have tons of information, but not much wisdom. Does anyone else want to share anything else? If there's no one else, then that will be it for now.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Lance.